No ordinary soul could ever withstand what's unfolding now, only those cut from a rarer cloth could recognize the truth veiled beneath these seismic moments. There's a certain electricity in the air, a kind of unseen voltage humming through the space between each breath, carrying the wild realization that what was meant to confine was, in secret, forging something revolutionary. Suddenly, the ground is shifting under the very ones who believed they orchestrated your downfall. Now, confusion blazes in their eyes as they watch the very person they once tried to silence erupt into a force they never anticipated, a presence impossible to suppress or diminish. It's as if the very rules they thought they wrote have twisted in the silence, and now the outcome belongs to someone who rewrote the game simply by enduring. Behind the scenes of every setback, an unseen hand was composing a much larger story. Each obstacle became a brushstroke painting their intentions in daylight, every harsh word and hidden sabotage etching new lines of evidence for all to see. What looked like chaos was, in truth, a quiet choreography, gently turning the spotlight away from illusion and toward what cannot be denied. Those who questioned your essence now face a reflection too clear to ignore, forced to acknowledge that every attempt to cloud your truth only made it more luminous. And as realization crashes through their constructed reality, the moment of recognition arrives. What was doubted cannot be dismissed, what was denied is now undeniable. Not everyone could withstand the relentless shadow casting and yet remain untouched by the falsehoods swirling in their name. Only those anchored by a rare kind of self-knowledge come through storms like these with something even brighter. Behind all the tangled stories spun by others, stories meant to paint suspicion, to drive wedges, to foster quiet distrust, something unseen was quietly rearranging every piece on the board. As attempts to tarnish reputation multiplied, an invisible balance was being restored. Every accusation and whispered half-truth, rather than landing as intended, circled back, revealing far more about those who spoke than the ones spoken about. The symmetry of this change, so precise, so unexpected, emerged not as coincidence, but as the perfect recalibration of unseen laws. There, within the turbulence, resilience revealed its quiet signature. Instead of crumbling under the repeated testing, a new level of composure surfaced, one that never asked permission to exist or needed to borrow its worth from another. Subtle forms of pressure that might have once shaken certainty now simply dissolved against a different kind of resolve. When pushed to conform or made to question their right to pursue their own path, the response was not anger, nor surrender, but a silent refusal to participate in any story that shrank their true dimension. What was meant to diminish became the very forge of something enduring, answering manipulation not with retaliation, but with a profound absence of agreement, an unwavering devotion to one's own growth that needed no audience and no validation. Only a rare kind of strength could ever recognize when the stage was shifting, and those who believed they held all the cards are now finding the deck reshuffled beneath their feet. Each attempt to undermine confidence, every subtle push toward second-guessing, all the quiet strategies to keep someone circling old doubts, these were never just random actions. There was a deeper mechanism at work, turning each moment of adversity into a spotlight that illuminated what needed to be seen. As intentions unspooled and the atmosphere grew tense with the weight of sudden clarity, it became unmistakably clear that the greatest transformation was happening in silence, forging endurance from the very forces meant to restrain it. Unwitting participants in a rite of passage, their roles were never central, even if they mistook themselves for authors of the outcome. Every barrier built out of small expectations or careful limitation was repurposed into a foundation for new levels of self-assurance, each step away from the familiar script leading to a kind of internal authority that could not be granted or revoked by anyone else. While the old patterns no longer applied, the realization dawned, these background actors had been witnessing a story that was never about them, and the direction had always been moving in a direction they could never command. When the dust settled, the most unexpected discovery was waiting. Those who once wore the mask of helpfulness, who cloaked their opinions in concern or false wisdom, had in fact been siphoning away vitality in ways almost invisible until the clarity arrived. Genuine optimism was questioned, not because it was misplaced, but because it was impossible for those living in perpetual dusk to understand the vision of a sunrise. What was framed as naivete or impractical hope turned out to be a profound refusal to accept a world limited by other people's fears, and in choosing not to inherit their gloom, a new narrative took root, grounded in possibility rather than lack. Most would have doubted their own radiance in the face of constant scrutiny. It takes a rare clarity to remain grounded when others insist that joy must be a performance and hope a mask. Every ounce of effort was poured into rewriting a story, painting genuine excitement as pretense, wisdom as confusion, vision as instability. But beneath the surface, a higher intelligence observed and kept record. What others labeled as irrational hope or unfounded brightness, the deeper design recognized as the natural signal of something untainted pushing through layers of inherited doubt. Authentic light has always startled those who cannot explain it, and here, what was once discounted as foolishness or fantasy revealed itself as the unmistakable signature of untamed authenticity breaking old patterns. The deeper irony is found in how everything was orchestrated beneath the surface of appearances. Even as judgment and suspicion spread, as alliances quietly formed around keeping distance, an unseen choreography moved into place. Attempts to suppress connection only magnified the possibility for new alliances to form, ones grounded not in shared fear but in mutual recognition of value. What was labeled too good for belief was, in truth, an invitation for something extraordinary to enter. As isolation became the intended outcome, a new constellation of kindred spirits was being summoned, ready to celebrate the exact qualities others had tried so desperately to erase. In the end, those who attempted to rewrite the story unwittingly made space for a new community to emerge, drawn together not by approval, but by resonance. Only those rooted in genuine growth could move through shifting alliances and rising tension without losing their center. Many would have folded, but here is proof of unshakable resolve. Now the air feels heavy with a new urgency as those who once sowed doubt scramble to repair bridges they themselves set aflame. Realization sets in with a quiet intensity. The very tactics used to try to unravel confidence have only cemented the foundations they hoped to undermine. Every scheme intended to stir chaos returned, magnified, illuminating the true source of unrest. Obstacles placed in another's path found their way home, and the weight of intention could no longer be shifted elsewhere. Their sense of control falters, and the very atmosphere they constructed now presses in on them, as consequences trace every action back to its origin. No longer in command, they are left facing the echoes of every choice. The discomfort grows as it becomes clear the so-called adversary was never an enemy, but a reflection, showing them the strengths they denied within themselves. Where posturing once sufficed, authenticity stood out, exposing where performance ended and reality began. The pressure to maintain illusion crumbled in the presence of unwavering clarity, and what was hidden was finally illuminated in the most undeniable way. Attempts to diminish what was real were never truly about the target, but about their own discomfort with the truth. It was not imitation or pretense they found threatening, but the undeniable presence of something they could never counterfeit. Being reminded of possibility by someone who had already claimed it made old excuses and familiar patterns unbearable. Amidst each challenge, a quiet mastery emerged, one that transformed adversity into momentum. Instead of letting hardship erode integrity, resistance became a tool for renewal. Betrayal was no longer an endpoint but a signal to grow past outdated boundaries. Patterns that once seemed permanent, attachments to fleeting validation or the comfort of old approval, were dissolved, replaced by a fierce commitment to expansion. Every distorted story was met with new evidence of authenticity. With every attempt to confine, fresh pathways opened. Shadows cast by others revealed the places where light could pour in, and the old ties to limitation simply faded away. In breaking from the cycles of expectation and imposed identity, the illusion of control lost all power. The only thing left standing was undeniable proof that authority over one's own life had never belonged to another, and freedom had been possible all along. Few ever recognize how easily borrowed authority dissolves when true ownership is reclaimed, real transformation begins when dependency is replaced with internal resolve. The illusion of control lasted only as long as permission was granted, and now, those old dynamics collapse without a trace. The boundaries have shifted. The old routines that once determined the pace are fading into irrelevance. Instead of retreat, what emerges is a surge forward, action replacing hesitation, clarity replacing confusion. The focus is now on forward movement. Adversity is not just survived, but leveraged. Life has found new depth, practices that once felt mechanical now pulse with genuine purpose. Insight flows without static. Every intention is sharper, every hope steadier. The connections that matter most, whether to deep wisdom or ancestral guidance, have become clearer and more powerful, and joy rises not as an afterthought, but as a natural result of alignment. Progress is not happening in spite of the resistance, but is built directly from it. Every attempt to create resistance was converted into momentum, each moment of doubt into renewed vision. Where limitation was intended, opportunity expanded. When exclusion was attempted, recognition appeared from unexpected places. Every instance of being told to shrink became a chance to prove that expansion was the only option left. What was once dismissed as fantasy is now reality unfolding before skeptics' eyes. Hopes once ridiculed are realized, undeniable and complete. Insight has been proven, not as speculation, but as lived experience. The presence of disbelief no longer carries weight, it simply serves as a silent audience for transformation. Those watching now are forced to confront the reality that what they doubted most has become the very foundation of progress. The reality of this awakening is undeniable. No amount of pressure could suppress what was destined to emerge. The tables have turned, and those who once believed they could orchestrate the outcome now realize their influence was only ever borrowed, never owned. Authenticity could not be contained, and the return to wholeness was inevitable. Efforts to regain favor have become frantic. Promises are offered, concessions made, in hopes of returning to a place now out of reach. Yet the landscape has changed. Old ties have dissolved, and the cycle cannot repeat at this higher level of understanding. Attempts to manipulate fall flat, unable to breach the new level of discernment. The line between sincerity and performance has become unmistakable, and what once clouded judgment now stands exposed, irrelevant against the clarity of genuine insight. Only those who have seen their own worth reflected back through hardship truly recognize how rare and vital their essence is in a world that often tries to overlook it. Through all the attempts to undervalue or dismiss, a quiet truth has emerged. Not every presence can be replaced, not every insight can be copied, not every love can be measured, and not every energy can be contained. Generosity is no longer confused with obligation. No longer is expansion traded for comfort, or vision diminished to satisfy the limits of another's perspective. Genuine connection celebrates growth rather than resenting it. Witnesses to transformation are not threatened, they're ignited by the spark of change. Enthusiasm for another's joy is recognized as a sign of true resonance. The ones who stay, who truly see, are moved not by envy but by inspiration. Their encouragement is authentic, their excitement contagious, their trust unwavering. These are the souls who have always seen beyond the surface, waiting patiently for the unfolding of something extraordinary. It is with this support that gifts once hidden are now openly shared, that light once tempered for the comfort of others shines without apology. Power is no longer diluted, nor is success regarded as a zero-sum game. Upliftment replaces competition, and everyone rises together. At this point, the story finds its own harmony, challenges are no longer sources of pain, but catalysts for beauty. As previous adversaries come to terms with consequences of their choices, the field of possibility expands. New connections form, old ties dissolve, and opportunities align with an elevated sense of self. Guidance arrives in unexpected forms, and invisible hands move circumstances in favor of growth and fulfillment. Old patterns give way to new realities, where every door that should open does so effortlessly, and every door that needs to close remains firmly shut. The removal of draining influences leaves a landscape ripe for creativity, intuition, and expansion. The mind sharpens, ideas multiply, joy becomes self-sustaining, and peace grows roots deep enough to weather any storm. The capacity to give and receive love increases until it colors every experience, transcending boundaries that once felt immovable. All along, the universe sought to deliver these gifts, yet only now can they be received fully, with every obstacle cleared from the path. Returning to authenticity feels like breathing after years underwater. The freedom to exist without filtering one's brilliance reignites the joy of simply being, without apology or restraint, without guarding against misunderstanding. The changes are so profound that recognition becomes a challenge for those holding on to the past. Everything has shifted: energy, presence, reaction. The former version, the one easily shaken or manipulated, has dissolved. In its place stands someone so centered, so untouchable, that attempts to disrupt or diminish are rendered powerless. The true astonishment ripples outward. What was meant to be destruction has been reclaimed as the very material for an astonishing rebirth. Only those who have turned obstacles into new blueprints for progress truly understand that old restrictions are not just left behind, they become the foundation for unprecedented growth. What once looked like an impassable threshold is now the starting line for an entirely different trajectory. Boundaries meant to confine dissolve so thoroughly that even memory fails to reassemble their shape. Those destined for greater heights aren't content to simply avoid setbacks, they refine adversity into new strengths. Pain becomes clarity, confusion becomes mastery, and every detour paves a route toward deeper insight. Hardship isn't merely overcome, it's leveraged, distilled into wisdom that cannot be gained through ease alone. In becoming a testament to resilience, real transformation takes place. Presence grows unshakable, and what once could be obscured now shines so clearly that even resistance collapses before it. Authenticity, instead of being a liability, emerges as undeniable proof that realness commands support from deeper currents, even when challenged by the surface noise. What makes the outcome even more remarkable is how every attempt to undermine truth has unexpectedly reinforced it. The more skepticism was projected, the more validation quietly accumulated. Doubts that were meant to distract only sharpened discernment. Each effort to cast shadows has become an unintentional spotlight, illuminating not just talent but the underlying source of all inspiration. Clarity arrives with undeniable precision, revelations dismissed by others unfold in exacting detail, leaving those who once doubted grasping for explanation. Skepticism yields to evidence as predictions and warnings once ignored become events that cannot be overlooked. The quiet inner knowing that was once minimized now stands as the new standard of certainty. Gifts not only recover from suppression, they expand into realms previously untouched. Freed from the static of toxic environments, every natural ability surges to new levels. Insight deepens, intuition sharpens, and connections to the intangible become both clearer and more immediate. Support from unseen allies flows unobstructed, and guidance is received without distortion or resistance. In the end, what was meant to diminish potential instead ensured its full flourishing. Attempts to close doors have opened corridors of clarity, and those who tried to prevent expansion now watch as it unfolds, unstoppable, undeniable, and fully realized. Only the rarest souls ever discover that their hidden strengths can reach full expression once the environment of doubt is cleared away. This is the moment when dormant abilities surge into the open and the entire landscape shifts. Those who once looked down now find themselves on the outside looking in, witnessing displays of insight and clarity that defy their imagination. The realization dawns, painfully, that all the efforts to silence this brilliance only deprived them of witnessing something historic, right before their eyes. Spectators now, they see what they once dismissed, marveling as possibilities unfold that seemed unreachable in their own world. What they once branded as fantasy now outpaces anything they could have achieved. The roles have reversed. What they took for granted has become a force they can only observe from afar. Where there was once mockery, there is now awe. What once seemed unremarkable has been revealed as the very thing their own actions kept them from experiencing firsthand. Yet this is only part of the unfolding balance. In an unmistakable reversal, emptiness now lingers where fulfillment once seemed easy. The universe holds up a mirror they cannot escape, frustration shadows their routines, and answers evade their requests. Life grows tangled, while abundance multiplies elsewhere. This is the revelation: their attempts to interfere were never just against a person, but against a deeper purpose. Opposition to the work of a destined path is never left unchecked. Unseen forces recalibrate the scales, and the consequences ripple outward in ways that cannot be controlled or explained away. Every trial met along the path became another measure of character, another test surpassed. Not once was bitterness chosen over grace, or retribution picked over compassion. In every instance where it would have been easier to retreat, resolve was chosen instead, standards upheld, light maintained, spirit unwavering. What might have become compromise became clarity. Throughout it all, the highest forms of maturity shone through, impressing even those whose guidance comes from the realm of spirit. Betrayal was met not with outrage, but with wisdom. Adversity led not to complaint, but to transformation. Choices reflected deeper values, always leaning toward growth and authenticity rather than settling for easy comfort. Time and time again, decisions were made that revealed the strength to evolve, even when that path was solitary or misunderstood. Now, reality aligns with this growth, and the world reshapes itself to honor every lesson learned and every elevation earned. Only those who have endured the storm recognize when the air finally clears, when suddenly, everywhere you look, new directions open that seem tailored for your best and highest path. The landscape rearranges itself, offering possibilities that once seemed distant or impossible. Doors once concealed now swing open in the exact moment of need, and circumstances bend themselves into shape, matching a renewed sense of purpose with uncanny accuracy. Allies now entering the scene are more than supporters, they are kindred spirits, unmistakably attuned to the frequency of genuine transformation. These are people who recognize the depth beneath the surface, having weathered their own seasons of change. What others might view as mere strengths, they understand as sacred tools, honoring both the journey and the destination. Each encounter feels orchestrated, arriving with a precision that transcends explanation and defies coincidence. Encounters, guidance, and opportunities now appear exactly when required. Encouragement arrives from unexpected sources, wisdom is offered from those who have walked similar roads, and collaborations materialize in perfect rhythm with evolving visions. This emerging network of connection and support forms a tapestry so precise, so meaningful, that randomness no longer seems a possibility. There's a clear sense of design behind every unfolding event. While this new reality forms, the echoes of the past are not lost. Those who once sought to hold power through manipulation now observe these changes with rising urgency, forced to witness the contrast between what is flourishing and what has faded. Recognition and acceptance flow easily in these new circles, qualities that were withheld or denied in previous chapters. The vitality that was never cultivated by old companions now thrives where encouragement and authenticity are celebrated. Attempts by previous detractors to claim a stake in this newfound strength are met with clarity. Assertions that hardship was a gift, or that opposition was the spark for growth, ring hollow when set against the reality of independent evolution. True advancement occurred not through the friction of resistance, but by transcending it altogether. Power and wisdom emerged in spite of old limitations, not because of them, and the narrative now stands clear and unchangeable for all who care to witness. Some people are simply placed in our paths as hurdles, not as guides. Their presence is a contrast, a reminder of what is to be moved beyond rather than what is to be pursued. Their actions act as the shadow that reveals the light, not as a source of wisdom but as a marker of transformation. Now, with growth fully realized, their influence fades. They served only to show the edges of possibility, to clarify what could never be accepted as truth, and to spark the ascent that would leave old patterns far behind. The aftermath for those who clung to manipulation is a deep reckoning, one that cannot be ignored or dismissed. The certainty once worn as armor now dissolves into uncertainty. The entire framework of belief, power, and relationship begins to feel unstable. What was once accepted as foundational is now questioned at its core. Doubt rises where conviction once stood, and there's an unspoken acknowledgement that a different path may have held the answers all along. A strange disorientation emerges, as the old confidence in judgment gives way to the undeniable evidence of a new order. Former critics now find themselves facing living examples of fulfillment and wisdom that contradict everything they built their identity on. What was supposed to be guidance is revealed as limitation. What was called authority is now exposed as resistance to change. Questions that once seemed unnecessary now echo loudly. What if the person they doubted was right? What if the optimism dismissed as childish was actually vision? What if the gifts criticized as fantasy were rooted in truth? What if boundaries that seemed rebellious were really the only wise response to stagnation? These unsettling inquiries break open the structures that once felt so secure, and the resulting vulnerability lets in new realizations. There is a dawning recognition: efforts to control or diminish another were rooted in unresolved fears and insecurities. Judgment becomes a mirror reflecting the absence within. Every attempt to stifle growth is exposed as a struggle with their own fear of being outpaced, left behind by the very evolution they tried to suppress. In this, the universe provides a powerful reflection, bringing up what has long been denied. The energy once projected outward now returns home, each act rebounding as a lesson. Where criticism was thrown, self-doubt is harvested. Where restriction was enforced, barriers now rise in their own experience. Attacks meant to undermine now clarify the state of their own spirit. This is not punishment but a natural outcome, a self-balancing equation, restoring harmony by letting each person reap only what they've sown.